Hey Freedom Fighters, Rob Berger here, author of Retire Before Mom and Dad. This is the video that goes along with Chapter 8. Recall that in Chapter 8 we looked at what I call the 7 levels of financial freedom, and hopefully you've read that chapter and you'll know that all of the levels are based on expenses. So we're looking at your monthly expenses and determining financial freedom based on how many months or years of your expenses you have saved. And that's a somewhat unique way of looking at financial freedom. So often you may hear folks talk about traditional retirement in terms of your income. So for example, you might hear someone say as a rule of thumb, you need to be able to generate 70% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. And they base it off of your income, I think in large part because the vast majority of people don't save very much. As a percentage of their income, as you know from the book, it averages around 5-6%. And so when you're saving that kind of, at that level, particularly through 30, 40 years of working, and you're spending the rest, unless your life takes a dramatic turn in retirement, you probably will need quite a lot of money relative to your income in order to live in retirement. Of course, you'll hopefully have the benefit of maybe Social Security or a pension, so that will certainly relieve some of the stress from your investments. But that's sort of the traditional way of looking at it. I think a better way, and by the way, this is true whether you want to retire early, whether you want to retire at a traditional age, or like me, you kind of hope, honestly, maybe never to retire or to retire 6 or 7 times. I think looking at your financial freedom in terms of effectively, it's how many months or years could you survive without making any money. That's really what it boils down to. And so that's how I set up the 7 levels of financial freedom, beginning with level 1, having just 1 month's worth of expenses saved, going all the way up to level 7, where you have 25 years worth of expenses saved. So what this calculator does is help you determine as an estimate, based on some really important assumptions, how long it will take you to reach level 7. Now, we're going to go through this calculator in more detail in the video that goes with chapter 11. We're going to walk through the withdrawal rate and how it works, how you can factor in your current savings, how you can customize the calculations down here. That's not what I want to do in this video. In this video, I just want to introduce you to the calculator. And by the way, you can find a link to it. Of course, it's in the book, but also in the description to this video. You can find a link to this calculator. It's a Google Sheet, spreadsheet, and you can just make a copy of it. Obviously, it's totally free. You can make a copy and use it, change it however you'd like. The one thing I want to stress in this video with this calculator, and something that I stressed in chapter 8, and I think it's counterintuitive, and it's this: how many years it will take you to reach level 7 financial freedom has nothing to do with how much money you make, at least not directly. It has to do with what percentage of your income you're saving. So for example, you can imagine one person making $100,000 a year and another person making $50,000 a year, and even a third person making $1 million a year. If each of them are saving 10% of that amount and spending 90%, it will take them each the same amount of time to save up 25 times their annual expenses. It seems counterintuitive. You'd think the person making $1 million could do it a lot faster. Well, in theory they could, right? Because they should be able to save a heck of a lot more than just 10%. However, if they're all saving 10%, the times don't change. And I want to show you that here. When you copy this spreadsheet, you'll see here an annual income of $100,000. I just start there because it's a round number. There's nothing special about that number at all. And I include the annual income because it seems odd that I even include it. If I say that all that matters is your savings rate, why even include a variable for income? The reason I do is because it's your income that will determine what I call your financial freedom fund, right? How much you need to have 25 times your annual expenses. This calculation is really easy. All it does is take whatever income you put here, and for each row, multiply it by the percent. So in this case, 100,000 times 95% would get you 95,000, and then take that number and multiply it by 25, and it gets this number. So as we change this, let's take it down to 90,000. When I hit enter, you'll see all these numbers change. What you didn't see, and this is the important takeaway for this video, you didn't see these numbers change, right? Because again, remember, if we're saving 5% or 10% or 20 or whatever the percentage is, your years to level 7 financial freedom don't change based on how much you make. So for example, I could take this 90,000 and instead make it 900,000. And keep an eye on these numbers here. Let's just keep an eye on this 64.3. It didn't change, right? Now, of course, the amount you needed in your freedom fund changed, and you're making a lot more money. But if you're just saving 5%, whether you're making 90,000 or 900,000 or 900 million, this number will get bigger. But how long it will take you to reach that number, given a certain savings rate, won't change. And that's the important takeaway. What that means for us is that our savings rate is critical. The other thing I want to mention before we end this video is that as your savings rate goes up, and you know this from the slingshot effect, your spending goes down. You get sort of a double benefit. Your spending goes down, which decreases your freedom fund, and maybe we can bring this number back down to reality. Let's just say 75,000. So as your spending goes down, this number goes down. So you can think of this as your goal, right? And up here, it's like trying to kick an 80-yard field goal. It's tough. It can be done. Well, I guess it can be done. I'm not sure if you can actually kick an 80-yard field goal. Maybe someone can. But as you spend less, you get closer and closer to the goal. So you get down to here and you're only kicking, I don't know, a 30-yard field goal. This is a chip shot, but I don't expect most of you to be saving 95% of your income. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're saving, you're able to put more money towards this goal. So you get that slingshot effect. The result is, and let's look at, say, the 6% number. This represents an estimate of your future annual returns on your investments. At a 5% savings rate, you've got a long way to go, 56 and a half years. If you double it to 10%, you go up by 5%, it drops by a lot, by more than a decade. And it continues to drop pretty significantly. You get to 20%, and someone out of college, let's say, is going to reach financial freedom in their, say, early to mid 50s. And so you get that benefit both of a lower financial freedom fund amount, because you're only spending 80%, and you're reaching that goal even faster because you're saving the 20%, say twice as much as if we compared to someone saving 10%. So that's the slingshot effect that we've talked about in the book. This shows you the actual numbers. Now, one last thing, and I want to stress this is important. These are estimates, right? We don't know what the future stock market returns are going to be. If you're watching these videos as you read and you've just gotten through chapter 8, we'll get into investing later in the book. But these numbers are estimates. That's all we can do as we project into the future. We don't know what the future is going to actually turn out to be. We can make, I think, reasonable estimates based on history, but there's no guarantee, right? So you have to keep in mind that these are estimates. The other thing to keep in mind related to this is life tends to be bumpy, right? I mean, I've yet to meet someone who started out and say, I don't know, saved 15% of their income right out of high school or college and never wavered from that. And 40 years later, they always saved 15%. That's certainly not how my wife and I worked, because at various times we had other goals. We wanted to buy a home, so for a while we were saving a down payment. We had children. We have two children who are now grown, but children are expensive. And so there were times when we could save perhaps less than we really wanted to. There were other times when we could save a lot more. And so you have to keep in mind that I think this calculator can be extremely useful and helpful in getting an idea and a plan in place for you as you would try to achieve and work towards financial freedom. But understand that things don't work in lockstep. If you're anything like me, you're going to have some successes when it comes to money, and you're going to have some failures. That's just life. It's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sometimes it might feel like 1 step forward and 3 steps back, right? That happens. The key is don't give up, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward. I hope this calculator will help give you at least some idea of how different savings rates can affect your years to level 7 financial freedom. And that's the real goal of this tool. Again, I'm going to come back to it in the chapter 11 video. We'll walk through it in a little more detail.